I like this music. We gotta use this playlist more often. Welcome back, everybody. Today we are reviewing the next big Marvel installment. Sorry, let me turn the music down just a little bit. I do really like it though. We are doing the next big installment, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, this one is said to be the final Guardians movie. James Gunn, it's his final Marvel movie. He's headed over to be the Kevin Feige of the DC, EU, whatever they're going to call that over there. And so there's been a lot of what's going to happen? Is everyone going to make it? That's basically the big question, is that who's going to make it out alive in this movie. And don't worry, guys. I am going to do spoilers at the end of the video like we always do. I'll put up the spoiler warning. I'll do another like little 10-second countdown or something like that. I'll give you guys plenty of warning before I go into spoilers. And I always it's hard to dance around. Like there was more of a plot structure in these trailers than sometimes there usually is. So that's good. So, talking about this, this one focuses a lot on Rocket's origin story, and their main antagonist is the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji. I said that a few times before the video, just so I would not be surprised by it. A brilliant actor, and I've seen him before. Mainly, we just saw him in Peacemaker as one of the Justice Society, one of the secret agents. So we're back with the Guardians, and they're trying to figure out who they are. And I feel like that's been kind of the running theme of this team, is that together they are the Guardians of the Galaxy, but individually, who are they? And I like that. I like that that was like a main focus of this movie. Now you do get the Guardian staples of all of these. You get the great needle drops, you get the good jokes, you get pretty solid action. And we were about halfway through this movie, and I was like, the action's leaving a little bit to be desired. And then the third act kick in. And yes, it is a big explodey third Marvel movie act, but because you are more attached to these characters than, say, Ant-Man Quantumania, you are more invested in what's going on, even though, again, it feels like, man, I don't need everything exploding on screen. Granted, this is James Gunn's last movie, but again, it's such a strange choice that every single time we need everything around us blowing up for Marvel to make sure we care about what happens to these characters when, this is what, a 2.5-hour movie? Yeah, 2:30 on the dot, and it's like, yeah, we've spent 2.5 hours with these characters, plus other two Guardians movies, plus the Christmas special, plus Infinity War and a little bit of Endgame. We care about these characters. You don't need to blow everything up on set to do that. This one, I feel like they really gave everybody a chance to act. And not saying I'm not one of those people oh, Marvel movies aren't real. You know what? It takes a pretty good actor to be standing in an entire green room and pretend that you're, fighting Thanos or something. I don't know. So, I respect a lot of actors. And let me start with Chris Pratt, because I know he's been kind of we're a little tired of Chris Pratt. And I get it. I'm kind of on the same page. But this movie, he felt different, and I like that, because I've always wondered, why? Just making sure that's closed. Why are they following Star-Lord? Because he kind of almost, and he literally says it in this movie. He's like, I almost cost half the universe, including myself, by losing my temper. I don't really ever know what I'm doing. I'm always joking and everything like that. And so I like the turn he takes in this movie. He's more mature. He's more mission focused. Less jokes. He's lost Gamora, and the Gamora that's in their multiverse now is from a different multiverse from Endgame, and doesn't want anything to do with them. And we'll talk about Gamora in a second. And I like his performance. in this movie. And if it's his last performance as Star-Lord, I think this was a really good one. And that goes with everybody. I like Dave Bautista, who has just continuously shown me that he is so much more than a big muscle wrestle guy. And especially in his last performance at Knock at the Cabin, where it's a performance, and I don't want to be like, oh, well, The Rock could never do this, but The Rock couldn't do that in that performance. He's like so small and so gentle, and maybe The Rock could do it. I don't know, but it's just something that you never would see them do. And so I love everything that Dave Bautista has done with his acting career in the past 9 years. And this is just such a perfect cherry on top if this is his last performance as Drax. Pom Klementieff, did I say that right? Klementieff, sorry. Who has really come into her own. Like, I feel like I'm repeating myself with all of these characters, but James Gunn wrote and directed this movie, and he knows these characters so much. And I say this might be the last time we see them. And I'm not spoiling, any possible on-screen deaths or anything like that, but I'm saying that I, as a writer or director, granted we know there's a writer's strike going on right now, I would be very nervous to approach these characters after someone who has completely created these characters, from their comic book origins and made them very James Gunn, made the Guardians very James Gunn, made them very Marvel-y and everything, like MCU. I'd be very nervous to take another stab at it, take another crack at it after like his signature and his formulas all over these, and he did such a good job forming them. It's gonna be tough to replicate, if the Guardians ever make a return. I like how the plot progresses. Everyone has been saying online, oh, like, I was crying through the whole movie. I cried at A, B, and C. They haven't spoiled anything. There was 2 moments that made me tear up, and I won't say what they were. Obviously, I'll say it in spoilers, but this movie does do a good job of tugging on your heartstrings. I will echo my friend Dan Merlin saying that there is, I will say a trigger warning for the animal cruelty stuff. I had read the review, so I kind of bolstered my, ready for it. And for me, it wasn't as bad as I had heard. It wasn't good, but you definitely see some stuff. And, yes, I know that it is part of Rocket Raccoon's thing, but just because you know something is coming just because you know something is there doesn't make it not hard to watch. Like, just because it's a part of his backstory doesn't make it like, God, it is tough. Like, even the characters on screen, when they learn about Rocket's backstory, are like, he never told us it was this bad. Hold on real quick. Oh, spam. But they do a good job they do a good job of showing Rocket's backstory. Bradley Cooper gives an amazing performance as Rocket. And it's such a crazy thing that this crew got assembled, because I remember hearing about this in 2014. It's like, oh, you think Bradley Cooper would be Star-Lord and Chris Pratt would be Rocket Raccoon, where their careers were at that time. And it's just such perfect casting by Marvel. I don't know I forget who the casting agent was on this movie or on the original Guardians, but they did an amazing job. Karen Gillan as Nebula still isn't my favorite, and I didn't get a chance to watch the Christmas special. I did miss that, and I hear that's pretty important. So I apologize for that missing context in this review. But she has grown with me over the years, and that's due to her performance, due to her writing and the directing, and from where the character is and where it is now. And she had some really great moments in this movie. When it comes to Gamora, this definitely feels like something that they needed to put in, because this is possibly the last Guardians movie, and definitely the last, James Gunn Guardians movie on the docket. It feels a little kind of forced in there, wedged in there. It wasn't too bad because Zoe Saldana is such a good actor. she has chemistry with, that entire crew already, but just her story and her being there was just like, oh, I get it, but also you don't need to be here. Like, Guardians 4 would have been the whole Gamora story. Like, maybe, like, she pops up and she's like, yeah, I don't remember you, Quill. Okay, bye. And then you're like, ah, oh, man, we got to get to that. But right now we got to take care of the High Evolutionary. But her sticking around, well, again, not bad. But it was just like, you could tell that James Gunn wanted to do more with it in a possible fourth movie if that ever happened. But I don't think it's going to happen, so they wanted to do a little bit in this. And I get it. I do get it. Other than that, honestly, I did enjoy this movie. You are going to cry. You are going to laugh. Some great action. Like, this is definitely, and I know it's Disney. Disney doesn't need a win. Disney doesn't, need a good box office. They run the world. They're going to be fine. But the Marvel brand as a universe, and maybe it should end. Maybe it should. Maybe it's run its course. And I've enjoyed stuff post-Endgame. Whether it be TV shows or movies, I think they've had a handful of good stuff. I think they've had a handful of mediocre to bad stuff. But they did need this. They needed, like, a director knowing what he's doing, not listening to the studio, not taking notes, and just being like, this is the story I want to tell, and doing it. Because even in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, there was like, oh, this is ugh. As hard of a job as, they had in front of themselves of completely rewriting the story after the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman, they did a good job in, like, bringing out the heart and soul of that movie. But then everything MCU related with Martin Freeman, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and even a little bit of, like, Ironheart, I was just like, this is just sticking out so hard. This rough. And that felt like, oh, we want to tell the story, but we still have to further the MCU. You didn't. You really didn't. And this is where you just need to tell your stories. Like, we know it's a universe. We know it's a TV show. We know that. Just tell your stories. I don't need Harry Styles showing up. I don't need Charlize Theron showing up. Like, I don't need a ready to go end credit scene. I'm Bliggity Blorp from the Hoobity Bops. Oh, wow. I definitely know that comic book character. We don't need that. We just need a good story with good characters. And that's what we got. And I don't know where it ranks in my Guardians movies. I don't know what ranks in the MCU. I don't really care, honestly. I enjoyed this movie. It made me feel the feelings. And that's what matters. That's what I like. So let me do some spoilers real quick, guys. So I'm going to put up the countdown again. So, spoilers ahead. Let's go. All right, spoilers. So, it starts out. Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot to talk about Adam Warlock. Sorry, I woke up real early for this showing. Early for me after a late night at work. And like I just woke up from a nap with my cat. Adam Warlock, he was fine. He's definitely like a big dork. They treat him like a kid in the movie because like they said like they birthed him too soon. Will Poulter does a good job for what he's given, but he's not even like a big part of it. The Sovereign with Elizabeth Debicki is kind of in it, but not really. It's fine. He's kind of like a non-factor, honestly. And I'm wondering what they're gonna do with him towards the end. Speaking of which, I'll start with the biggest spoiler. Post-credit scene. He does the full Fast and Furious thing where enemies become friends, and he's one of the Guardians of the Galaxy at the end of the movie. So that's what they're gonna do with him. He's on the Guardians with Rocket and King Groot. Groot, who's like there's like a kaiju mode Groot in the movie. Now he's full kaiju at all times. And just the two moments, I want to start with the two moments that really made me cry. Is like, one was the end dance scene with The Dog Days Are Over by Florence and the Machine. And that's what gets me. Happy moments will always make me cry more than sad moments. And that worked. It got me. I love seeing people happy. And it was like it felt like Return of the Jedi. Like, where it was just like, oh my God, we finally won. And granted, I don't know if like the High Evolution, like, he seemed like a big bad, you know, he owned an entire planet and everything. But it was just like, we won, and like, you know, we're going our separate ways and everything. And it was great. And they're just all dancing around. It was really, really good. And then the first moment that got me was, you know, when Rocket's like flatlining and Lila welcomes him. And just like anytime there's stuff about like, I don't know what it is about like friends welcoming people to the afterlife. Because that, like in Attack on Titan, spoilers for Attack on Titan, when Hanji died and then Erwin picks her up from in like the afterlife and says you fulfilled your duty, I just stop and like fully weep. And granted, I didn't do that in the movie theater. Like, I was just kind of like, oh, eyes were welling up. It was very sad. But just any stuff like that, I don't know what it is about that, but it just gets me, man. It really gets me. The High Evolutionary, the actor did a good job, but he was just very one note for me. Chukwudi Iwuji, like, he did a great job. He did exactly what he was asked to do, but I feel like he went to, like, he started off very calm and everything, but then, like, about 45 minutes into the movie, he dialed it up to 11, and then he just stayed at 11 the rest of the movie. And I mean, that's a choice. And I'm okay with villains being villains. Not everybody needs to be like a Killmonger where it's like, oh, I kind of agree with what he's saying, but the way he's going about it is the problem or something like that. But just like it just, we can have villains be evil. We can just have evil people be evil. But it was just like when you're dialed up to 11 for that long, like it just gets a little it just gets a little much after a while. And we are at a point where we've seen so many just like mwahaha mustache twirling evildoers in the MCU alone, let alone like in movies, that, you know, sometimes it gets a little tiresome. But he did do a really great like job, did a really well done performance. All of the flashbacks with Rocket and all the other 89, you know, the 89 experimented animals with Lila, performed by Linda Cardellini. Heartbreaking, just absolutely heartbreaking. Whoever voiced, Asim Chaudhry voices Teefs, and Michaela Hoover voices Floor. Floor, I just absolutely fell in love with. I want a Floor plushie or something. Like, I don't know if they'll sell them, like, because that doesn't seem very Disney, but I would die for Floor. Absolutely, I would die for Floor. I don't know. It just, there's not really much to spoil besides, like, you know, the two moments that I basically cried. Like, I like where, and also like just dad stuff. And when Peter goes back and sees his grandpa, got me so bad. Oh, you just knew how to do it. You just knew how to do it, James Gunn, and I respect you for it. But great way to separate it. And I like, you know, even like I said, like Gamora didn't really fit in with them. Like, I feel like you could have had the whole scene with them going to the big organic thing, stealing the information, and that's when Zoe Saldana should have left. Gamora comes in and just like, yeah, peace out, Quinn, I don't like you anymore, I never did. And then she goes back and you see her with the Ravagers, and like, oh yeah, you're not a Ravager, you like us, you like our, you know, you're like our family. And then she goes back to the Ravagers, and that really is her family. And even that was a good moment. And I like the lesson that Peter was learning. It's like, you know, the thing that Drax says, like, you know, you've been jumping from person to person like a lily pad on a pond, and I think you need to swim. That's a great meta. That's a well-written James Gunn. Kudos to that. That is good stuff. And so just like everything about this movie from like a character standpoint worked. I understand if, you know, you don't find the jokes funny. Some of the stuff is hard to watch. Some of the animal cruelty is hard to watch. I completely get that. But for me, like the character stuff, everyone for me found a great conclusion. I'm glad nobody died. I mean, that's an easy thing to say, but like, you know, when characters die, you're like, oh man, like they did, it was a good death, you know, character wise. Like he had run his, you know, you watch anime, I'll again bring up Attack on Titan again. Like I hated that all the characters that have died in Attack on Titan have died, but I understand why story wise they had to die or why they did die. And just like in this story, I don't think anybody needed to die to further anything or to make the plot better or the story better. So I'm glad no one died, and it really worked for me. You know, as Rocket was talking to Lila in the basically the platform 9 3/4 looking place, I was very scared, and I did not want that to happen, and it didn't, and I was very happy. It was very tropey. I was like, oh yeah, of course you can join us in the afterlife, but not yet. I was like, ah, you got me. Like there was like an audible reaction of like when she stopped, she's like, not yet. And everyone's like, yeah. It's like no one wanted Rocket to go. It was a great moment. But no, I was surprised because, you know, I was not a big fan of Guardians 2. I've seen it a few times, and like my rating still stays the same, where that was the point where a big moment of like, you cannot let emotions stand still, Marvel. I don't know what it is, but you just can't do it. With like the David Hasselhoff moment, with like so many things of like let things feel. Let's feel some feelings here, and let's do that. But they couldn't, and in this movie they do. They let you feel feelings. Are there jokes? Yes. But not every joke is a quote-unquote Marvel joke. Like I hate seeing that stuff on like my For You page on my TikTok. It's just like, oh my gosh, you're allowed to be funny in movies. Not every, like, it doesn't, like, when, you know, Dan tweeted out, like, oh, like, this movie's, like, dark. It's, like, grim. And everyone's like, yeah! It's like, that doesn't make it good. Oh, it's so frustrating sometimes. But there are really dark moments, and I feel like they serve the story well. It does revel in it a little bit. You are going to be in those cages a while, like those animal cages. Like a lot of those flashbacks they are tough to watch. I will not lie. It was tough to watch, but I think it served the story well. And again, I will die for Floor, and I want a Floor plushie. If someone wants to make one for me, I will pay for it. But yeah, I did enjoy this movie. It is sad. Like, I'm not sad that James Gunn is well paid. He's writing a Superman movie. He is living it up. But not seeing these characters together with this creative force behind them is a little bit sad. This was a perfect send-off for all of them. I don't know if and when we'll ever see any of them again. I'd love to see God, I'm blanking on names. I'd love to see a Drax solo story, you know, like a Nowhere story with, who was it? It was Drax, and Nebula on Nowhere. And then I'd love to see a Guardian story, you know, the new Guardians of the Galaxy with Rocket and Groot and Adam Warlock and Cosmo, and Sean Gunn and all them. And then I'd love to see a Nebula. Oh, sorry, not Nebula. Mantis. I'd love to see a Mantis little, like, just a 20-minute short. You know, just like, or maybe a little MCU TV. Like, I don't know. Just like episodic New World with Mantis. She's seen a lot, you know, just traveling around with the Guardians. But she hasn't seen much, and I'd like to see that. Let's do that. So it is sad to see that they might not be together again, but you do have a lot of great stories upcoming. And in the post-credit scene saying, you know, Star-Lord will return. We'll see. Like, I do love where his story ended up, and I'd be okay with maybe he retires for a few years and just lives in Missouri with his grandpa and mows the lawn. That's great. That's a happy ending right there, man. And if he wants to come back when Secret Wars happen or something, I'm cool with that too. We'll see. But thank you guys so much for watching my 25-minute ramblings that probably made no sense at all because I'm terrible at describing plots. But I hope you guys got what I meant. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye-bye.